The name Lovely Gully conjures up visions of a verdant paradise, with trees dappling shade over a glistening, singing brook, trickling by a carpet of dainty, waving flowers of all hues. Lovely Gully was none of that. The name was given in irony to a heat-blasted crease in the earth, more than 200 miles north from Adelaide. One traveller who had ventured there in the 1890s described it as having a few stunted mulga trees, some tasteless quandongs, and shrivelled blue bush and salt bush. There was only one reason why most people would come to such a desolate, distant destination, and that was gold. Prospectors' tents and the shafts they dug into the dry, rocky earth in search of the precious metal sprawled over 3 miles through the gully. Some say James Love was the first man to find gold there about 1890, and that the gully was named after him, but who knows? The nearest town, some miles away, was Warkaringa, where the summer temperatures often reached 116 degrees Fahrenheit during the day, before dropping to cold, even freezing nights. Gold had been discovered at Warkaringa in 1873, and by 1888 a town had grown up. The population was estimated to be 750 people in 1890. In a century, over 3,000 pounds of gold was extracted from the fields around Warkaringa. One of those who came to this arid land was a man from Prussia of Polish extraction, named George Morawski. George was well known and respected in the Warkaringa area. Described as a reserved and kindly old man in his 60s, he had been employed on nearby Melton Station for 5 years as a boundary rider and dingo catcher. George left that job on the 19th of March 1894 to go prospecting, and encountered another man who had walked to South Australia from far west New South Wales, along the Darling River to Broken Hill, and then across country to the Warkaringa district. William Brown, alias William Allen, alias William Lane, was about 38, but said to look a decade younger than his age, despite his hair beginning to turn grey. A slightly built man of average height, 5'10", and weighing about 10 stone. He had light brown hair parted in the centre, what was described as a weak face, and a small moustache. His upper lip was short, and when he spoke his teeth showed, making it seem as if he was always smiling. Brown had been born in Dublin in 1854. He left Ireland at the age of 19 and joined the 24th Regiment, which he remained with until February 1883. Brown arrived in Sydney in June of 1883. He married, but little else is known about his early time in New South Wales. It is known that Brown had been in trouble with the law. On the 7th of February 1888, he was tried at Burke under the unlikely alias of Henry Tickletoes for forging and uttering, for which he received 3 years' jail, reduced to 2. He was released from Goulburn Jail in October 1889. Only a month later he was arrested in Sydney for attempting to fraudulently obtain money by false pretences, impersonating a man named Edward Hamill. He was sentenced to 5 years' imprisonment, and when released from Bathurst Jail began his journey that led to Warkaringa. The two men fell in together. Morawski had the supplies needed: 2 horses, a buggy, tents, rifle, tools and camping equipment. Brown, being younger, would have been able to help out the older man in the physical labour, so Morawski took him on as his mate, working for his food. The pair set up a camp north of Bewley Well, 6 miles from Melton Station. On April the 10th, Morawski saw his former employer, Ernest Rumble, at 18 Mile Dam, about 8 miles from the camp, and informed him of his intention to move to another area to try his luck. Morawski said he would try near Wright's Dam. Brown was present at the meeting, and the men seemed to be on good terms. Morawski was never seen alive after this time. Brown spent some time drinking whisky with another prospector named Charles Webb on the 11th or 12th of April. Brown arrived alone at Minburra on the 14th of April with the buggy and 2 horses. In the buggy were mining tools marked M for Morawski, a spare tent, rifle and other small items. Brown wanted to sell the lot to William Stott, who farmed here. Rather bizarrely, he said to the farmer, "If you won't buy them, I will throw them at you." Stott paid £1 for the lot. Brown told the farmer that he had come from Broken Hill and and was prospecting in Lovely Gully. His mate was coming from Walkeringha. Another farmer, Oliver Jones, saw Brown at Young's Well, near Minborough, the same day, and purchased the buggy from Brown early the following morning. Brown was next seen at Kavanagh West at about 1 p.m, where he sold the skewbald horse to another farmer. He told this man his name was William Allen, when given a receipt for the sale. Then Brown arrived at the Dawson Hotel late on the 15th of April and stayed until the 21st. At first he said he needed some whisky for his mate who was ill some distance away, but having obtained the liquor, stayed in the pub and drank it himself. He sold the bay horse for £3 and also a watch for 10 shillings to the publican, which funded his week of enjoying English ales during his stay. Brown told people at the hotel that he had once served in the Royal Irish Regiment and had seen active service in Zululand and on the Nile. He had with him letters from Princess May, the Duke of Teck, and Sir Evelyn Wood, which he proudly showed to anyone who had the time to look them over. Brown had been an attendant to the Duke of Teck during the campaign in Egypt at the Battle of Tel el-Kebir in 1882 that secured British hegemony over Egypt. In the letter of recommendation, the Duke described Brown as brave, useful, and hard-working. Major Barrow of the 19th Hussars had commanded Brown during the Anglo-Zulu War and the Transvaal Rebellion. He wrote that Brown was one of the best men under his command, steady, energetic, and ready for hard work. He had been an attendant to Sir Evelyn Wood in Natal, and had given every satisfaction. When he left the hotel, he said he was going to the northeast shearing sheds, but instead headed south. On the 10th of May, Morovsky was reported missing to the police, and on the 11th, Ernest Rumble, with a number of station hands, accompanied Mounted Constable Easter to the campsite. There they found the tent partially standing, a few articles of little value in it, and with a note affixed to it, which read, April 10, to Mr. Rumble. Sir, I am going away for a few days to the New Rush. My mate got some money. The things in the tent are mine, and I will come for them. G. Morovsky, his cross. Drag marks led about 150 yards from the tent to a newly filled-in hole. The party began digging, and about 2.5 feet down they exposed a man's heel. The grave was not quite long enough to accommodate the body, which was doubled up with the head 2 feet deeper than the feet. The body was clothed, except for the feet, and had a rug around the legs, and a bag drawn down over the head as far as the elbows. When this bag was removed, Rumble recognised the man, despite decomposition, and the bones of the head and face being broken up from a battering, as that of George Morovsky. Dr. Stevenson of Petersburg examined the body the following day at Walkeringha. He found the skull severely damaged, with the upper part severed from the lower part, and thought at first a blunt instrument, like a hammer, might have been used, before concluding that Morovsky had been shot from a distance of 2 or 3 feet away at the base of the skull. His investigation found some of Morovsky's teeth in his gullet, which he could not explain as a result of the gunshot, suggesting that Morovsky may have been hit in the mouth before death by a punch, or by being hit across the face by some object, possibly the butt of the rifle. Brown, meanwhile, was recognised as having been at Stirling West in the Adelaide Hills, offering his services as a horse clipper in early May, and a report sent in by the local police. He had made reference to having clipped the horses of royalty, and mentioned the names of the people in the letters he had shown at the Dawson Hotel. He had also said he was intending to go to the Mitcham area, among others. Consequently, Constable Carroll and Detective Fraser were on alert, and from a tram they were riding on noticed a man walking along Unley Road, between Mitcham and Unley, in the Adelaide suburbs, on the 15th of May, and alighted and spoke to him. The policemen were suspicious that the man matched the description of the man wanted for the Lovely Gully murder. They asked him where he was on the 16th of April. He refused to say. He had come from Mount Barker, but had been around a lot of places. He accompanied them back to Unley Police Station, and was asked about Lovely Gully, but said he would say nothing. He was taken to the City Watch House, and in the evening was going to be taken to Glen Osmond to retrieve some of his belongings, when he suddenly asked Constable Garrett Sayers if he was a constable or a warder. When informed he was a constable, the man said, "They have got the right man all right. I shot Moravsky. We had a row. I was mad drunk. You can have the case now. It may get you promotion. I wouldn't tell the detectives. I saw the newspapers the other day and knew it was all up. I feel easier now I have told you." The next day Brown was taken by train back to Petersburg, today called Peterborough, the nearest large town to Lovely Gully. At the trial held in Gladstone in July, Brown had pled not guilty, but after listening to the witnesses, decided to tell the story of what had happened. This is a direct quote. "Honoured Sir and Gentlemen of the Jury, I shot the deceased, George Moravsky, in a row with a rifle produced in court, with a ball the same as shown in court, with a piece of flannel round it. Death was instantaneous. I may as well tell you, gentlemen, how it occurred. I went into Walkerenga on April 13 for rations and a bottle of whisky. I left as 1 o'clock and met Webb and O'Brien at Salt Well. O'Brien had been a prospector sent out by the government from Adelaide under subsidy. He had been prospecting at Lovely Gully and finding gold. He came to our camp at Bewley Well with a bag of dirt. He washed it and found specks of gold in it. When I met him at Salt Well, he accused me of having told someone that he was finding gold. I gave Webb a drink of whisky. O'Brien would not have any. I went home and had some words with Moravsky. I had girth-galled his horses. We got friendly again, and in the afternoon we were drinking whisky, and I told him what O'Brien had said. He said, 'O'Brien is right. You're putting him away.' We had a fight, and Moravsky called me a bloody bastard, and I told him, Your Honour, that he must apologise. I took the gun out of the next tent, and came to the tent where he was in the act of going to bed. The moon was shining, and I told him that if he did not apologise I would shoot him. I fired, and the bullet struck him on the left side of the head, in a line with the ear. And I cannot account for what I did in camp afterwards, Your Honour. I found myself next day at the 10-mile dam with a wagonette and 2 horses. I washed myself and drove off to Minborough and met Jones. He directed me to Stott's farm. I stayed there that Saturday night and sold the wagonette to Jones and the other things to Stott. I had 2 bottles of strychnine with me, and when I left Stott's farm I planted them in a creek. I went to Dawson and started drinking. I walked away from there without a swag and slept in a railway carriage that night at Petersburg. I walked into Adelaide, arriving there the day the Angus wing of the Children's Hospital was opened. I have nothing more to say. The distance from Petersburg to Adelaide is 137 miles. Brown's statement closed the case for the defence, and the court adjourned until the following morning. The trial concluded on the 27th of July. The court was opened at 9 o'clock, but long before that hour, the front of the building was thronged with a curious crowd waiting for admittance. Mr. Solomon, for the defence, attempted to convince the jury that Brown may have acted on an uncontrollable impulse from anger due to having a neurotic character, and been temporarily unaware of his actions. The judge, in addressing the jury, said that they had 3 options: murder, manslaughter, or acquittal. They debated the question for half an hour, sought guidance from the judge, and then returned to their conclave for a further 20 minutes. They returned to pronounce that William Brown was guilty of murder. When asked if he had something to say, Brown proclaimed, "It is a wrong verdict. It should have been manslaughter. I shot the deceased Moravsky in the row." The judge then sentenced Brown to death. As he was led from the court, Brown shouted out, "I wish to be shot. It is a wrong verdict." In a letter he wrote in the condemned cell, he claimed there was evidence at the Peter Morris Hospital in Natal that he was of unsound mind. At Adelaide Jail on the 24th of August, 1894, Brown showed no signs of fear. On the way to his execution, he asked Dr. Cleland, who was among the official witnesses, to examine his brain post-mortem. He dropped 6.5 feet on the end of the hangman's rope and died instantly. Like Moravsky, Brown, and those who once lived there, the towns too passed away. Dawson Hotel is now a ruin in a ghost town. The post office there closed in 1971. Wakaringa died even earlier. The population dwindled to nothing through the 1950s, and the last publican, a man named Bob DePuri, died in 1963. His hotel and store had managed to survive in a town with no people, with the business he gained from those living on nearby stations and travellers passing through. But after his death, everything was sold and carted away. A description of Wakaringa in 1964 mentions a building that was apparently once a community hall, made of corrugated iron, opposite which was a small weatherboard cottage. A draper's shop with broken windows was next to the cottage, and next to that were two fireplaces that marked the site of vanished buildings. Across the street was another cottage, this one built of stone, with an iron roof. Its gate was missing, and an old box wagon sat abandoned beyond it. A little away from these buildings was the Wakaringa Hotel, the name emblazoned on one of the walls. The ruins of the hotel and the other buildings are the only reminders left now, slowly crumbling away. The town was officially declared to have ceased to exist in 1982. Where people once lived and dreamed and killed and died, the desert winds blow through a ghost town with the faintest whispers of memory from the dark corners of history.